Hi, this is KnitFix and Chill. It's a podcast for knitters who want to go deeper. We're doing industry topics, technical topics, creative conversations about the knitting industry and our craft and practice. I'm Jen. I'm a knitwear designer, educator, and consultant.
And I'm Bess. I am a knitwear designer, artist, and writer. And let's do it.
Yeah.
Hey, Jen, what's your tea today?
I just ripped out a month's worth of work on a sweater that I'm designing, and that is very much on my mind. It is going to mess with all of my deadlines. I have to write the dyer and tell her, and I'm not the smallest size. It's a lot of reknitting in a sweater that I have not been enjoying knitting. So
that sucks. I think that's very real insight into this week's topic of like what it's really like behind the scenes as a designer. Yeah.
I love the way it looks. I love the way the fabric looks. It's a very sticky yarn. It's a farm yarn, so it's going to perform perfectly in this colorwork sweater. But I feel like
that's also hard to rip out, right? Because it's like
it's tough to rip out. And it's been a learning curve for me on getting my tension right when the yarn is sticky. This sticky. Like I've worked with non-superwash yarns before in colorwork, but anyway, in some ways it's nice to have the opportunity to start over. It always is, even though, you have to get over that first hump where you decide to start over, and then it's like, okay. So
yeah,
that's my tea. Oh, coffee
and coffee.
What's your tea? Is your tea also coffee today?
No, my tea is a vanilla chai, but you know what? I told you I wanted to surprise you with my tea because last night I also ripped out a month's worth of work on and I knew you were going to bring yours up. And I realized on a seamless organic cotton tee I'm working on that I've been knitting with the wrong size fucking needles.
Oh, no.
For like weeks. And since I joined at the underarm, because it's also a top-down seamless design, and I was like close to the hip, and I realized. But it was relieving because I was like, why doesn't this look good?
Yeah,
and
you want there to be a reason for that.
Right, because the needle size was too big. And at first, because I'm so stubborn, at first I just ripped back to where the increases started after the bust. So I was like, well, I have big boobs. But after knitting like an inch or two there, I was like, no, I have to rip this back and I have to rip all the way back because you just want it to be right? Like when you realize. And it was one size needle, but people don't realize perhaps that could equate to like a lot of extra space in the garment and a lot of extra rows. And this is a fingering weight. So it's like 300 stitches. So, when you're a quarter stitch off at 100 stitches, it's still equal to like an inch extra. When you're a quarter, when you're a quarter stitch off with 300 stitches, you're looking at a lot of extra stitches, and it's not, you can't just pretend.
I'm going bottom up, and I had gotten to 2 rows before the underarm. I'd already done
a whole thing.
Flat in color work. Yeah.
I did bust darts too. Mine is just stockinette, so it's not as painful, I think, as I
would rather reknit something interesting than knit colorwork or knit stockinette in the round, frankly.
I don't know. I can jam on stockinette in the round for, hours while my stepdaughters are like, stepdaughtering and not make mistakes. So some of my projects, when they're more intricate, like the Jane dress that I have in testing right now is a herringbone stitch that like I couldn't knit that unless it was 1, daytime because it was dark yarn, and 2, like fairly peaceful because it was a complicated stitch.
A focus
color work. I like never do color work, I feel like that's might be a little bit in between, because the stitching is fairly simple, but you're just changing colors enough to maybe be
tension for
interesting.
me. Like, because
Well,
my left
yeah.
hand is like basically a vestigial shrimp. Like, I'll be like, come on, little buddy, keep tension. And I'll be like,
It's like Finding Nemo, but like with
yeah,
your
it's not
hand.
But here's why I'm really lucky, and I want to say this because it has to do with what we're talking about, which is like what we wish we knew as designers. And the real lesson here has to do with like the reason I had to rip out is because I have it's a fairly large colorwork repeat and it's all over. So it's a 12 stitch repeat. Mm-hmm. And so to get closer to accurate ease, I was trying to make it work so that some sizes had an even number of repeats and some had odd. Right? Because if you have to increase by 24 stitches between every increment, like that's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. Even in fingering weight, that's pushing your 4-inch mark, right? Between sizes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that I had figured out the spatial thing to do that. And I'm a dummy head and didn't check once I had worked into the color work a little bit, or this would have jumped out at me. But I feel really lucky because had I been knitting a different size that did not have an odd number of repeats, I could have gotten all the way into test.
Right. All the way and then up. Found out.
And then people be like, this isn't centered in the back or the front. It's not centered. And it seems like you should just be able to, but because it's an even number of stitches, if you want the pattern to be centered, you have to get rid of an odd number of stitches in the underarm. Anyway.
Yeah. It's just like a little.
Here. I'm not strong here and I should have checked. So I'm 3 rows into the color work and it's going to work. And I feel really fortunate that I caught it myself rather than getting all the way through all the work and then having to start over, basically.
I mean, I feel like that about my ripping out as well, because if it were after it's blocked, after I, add trim and soak it, and then I realize that it's baggy and kind of sheer and like not the right. And like I said, I was looking at the fabric being like, why is this so loose when my swatch was like a much denser kind of fabric? And yeah.
Okay. So now that you're ripping out, are there things that you will change also?
No, unfortunately, I don't think I need to change anything.
I feel like that's like,
but it will look better, which is what matters to me. And most importantly, it'll be accurate. And I would rather figure it out when I only had to rip back, 200 rows than rip back the whole entire thing. Yeah. Because it was the correct needle from here up. And I put the back stitches on a size bigger to hold them, which I do. Yeah. And then when I went to join them, I used the wrong one. Which was also because I assumed whatever. It's like, I just made all of these assumptions based on like, oh, my newer knitting needles are the one that I have in this size, but it was the older one. And just, what I wish I knew as a designer when I was starting out, you got to double check everything all the time.
Yeah. And I also feel like when I was new, then this is the reason I asked that, is because when I was new, making the decision to rip out and start something over is so hard, especially when you're new, because it takes you so long to get to the point where you're ready to cast on anyway. But then like when I was new, I would always be like, but at least I'll be able to redo XYZ. Like, okay. Yeah. The compromises that I was like, well, maybe I would do that again differently. Like, you have a chance. And now I feel like we're out of that stage. Or
right. It's really less liberating. Yeah, you're trying to find a silver lining of like, well, I could have had to rip out 600 rows instead of 200, but it's still a bummer no matter how you go about it. It's kind of a bummer. I don't think it's that
solidarity. We're in it together.
Yeah. But I am excited to talk about this week's topic because there's a lot that I wish I had done differently. And yeah, I could totally relate to that idea of like when I was a new designer, that every time I ripped out, there was like a feeling of relief a little bit, because there was always things I was learning. And especially because I have only designed garments. I have only designed adult sized garments. I have not designed anything else. That's really like where my interest lies in knitting, right? You've only done garments as well, right? Well, no, you have done accessories.
I've done accessories. I've done a couple hats. I've done a couple shawls.
Do you consider yourself a garment designer primarily, though? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that about you. Did you do the hats and shawls first? What was your first release, Jen?
Kid sweaters.
That's what I thought. And then you moved into like adult accessories and adult sweaters sort of at the same.
Yeah, I got started. We talked about this in a previous episode. I had one kids design and then submitted a kids design, and they were like, well, we want you to do it for adults too. And I think I was actually working on those a little bit at the same time. My first was a hat. Because I just wanted to see what the process was like. And because I couldn't find what I was looking for in hat patterns. I was like, how is this possible? There's 10 million hats.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that hat.
One? Yeah.
Because I remember you sending me a photo and being like, this is my first ever like pattern photo. Look at how far I've come. And it was like a selfie in like the mirror. It was still cute. You looked cute though.
It was like 1:00 in the morning. It was like an overhead dining room light. I'm wearing an old hoodie. And like
in a hat.
We've come a long way. We've come a long way.
I'm just curious, like, where, as someone who's only designed garments, like how people put those things together. I've thought about adding some accessories to my design calendar, but we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. Yeah,
I do a few, but mostly it's just for funsies. I don't consider it the core of what I do.
Right. Well, and that's because we kind of have to specialize if we hope to make like any money, right? Because something that people may not realize if you're not in the design world already is that like a lot of knitters will specialize and they knit like socks or they knit accessories or they knit garments. Even if you are a knitter that knits like a lot of different things, in order for a designer to be sort of like seen and recognized within a space, we have to put out a lot of the same type of thing. It's like one of the reasons I'm afraid to release like a sock pattern, because I like knitting socks a lot, is that like, I'm like, I don't know if any of my people knit socks. And if they do knit socks, like, do they have a favorite sock designer that they knit all of that person? And you can, of course, build into any space that you want. However, you know, it takes a while of releasing designs that are in the same type of category before you're going to have any trust. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, it is what I would say. I agree.
Yeah. So your first designs in any category are unlikely to be super profitable. But we're all hoping at least to be profitable and not lose money designing. And so it helps to specialize.
It does help.
Oh man. Well, wait, let's get into our letters from knitters and designers before we open up the conversation a little more, huh?
Yeah. So we asked listeners and we asked our newsletter group to share with us their thoughts, either as a knitter of what they're curious about from us, or if they're designers, what they wish they had known when they started. So Connie wrote us and told us, I wish I had known how to access more resources to guide me in building a successful business, including how to find a tech editor. There's so much more readily available now than there was 10 years ago, though.
Yeah, truth. We have a letter here from Celine. Hi, Celine. I wish I had known more about ease and how much I needed in various parts of the garment to get the look I wanted. Also, how much easier it is to start with determining the different points of measure, converting those to stitches, and then figuring out the shaping to get to those stitch counts. When I first started, I was letting the shaping take the lead, and it often didn't end up where I wanted it to, like arm side depth especially, which is a great technical point. And I'm excited to jump into all of this.
Yeah, and then Mary added, don't expect to make money right away. If that's why you've gone into designing, you might have a bit of a shock. Some people do with their first design, but it's rare, especially if you don't have a big social following first. But on the plus side, no one can prepare you for how amazing it feels to have other people making, wearing, and loving something from your brain. seeing them have something in their wardrobe that works for them is the best feeling ever. And I'm so glad that Mary highlighted one of the beautiful parts of designing, which is the opportunity to serve people.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people get into designing from that standpoint, or I hope that they do, because like Mary said, both of those points are super true. Like, yes, you can't expect to make a lot of money right away. And some people do. And even like we have known some designers who didn't even start off with a large social media following, but they still like had that really strong first pattern that would do really well. However, even in cases where people may do super well in their first pattern, like we don't know how things are going to go in their second, on their third, because you're building more than just like a pattern. If you're designing, like Connie said, you're building a business, and that means like each designer has to figure out like who am I as a designer? Who do I design for? And what do they like? What does that person want to knit? And the more work you put into there, like the more likely you are to have sales, right?
Yeah. It's that Venn diagram of overlap.
Right. So as you start from a point of like, I want to serve this person that is underserved for whatever reason, because their style isn't represented, because their size isn't represented, whatever. There are many different reasons why someone isn't finding the knitting pattern that they want out there in the world.
Yeah.
But the more that you like remember that person, the more rewarding it is, because you actually like meet those people and see them enjoying your work. And also the more successful usually your business is going to be, because you're actually thinking about the client more than yourself.
Yeah, I feel like there's this growing, as we see more and more designers, there's kind of this growing idea that once you become a good knitter, a great knitter, an expert knitter, the next step is to become a designer. Like there's like this skill track that has designing and grading and becoming a professional designer at the top of that skill chart, instead of knitting and designing being like totally separate things, right? And I wish we had more people who were making things that you couldn't grade, right? Because let's be real, like when something has to fit every size, that does limit what you can do. There are things that are ungradable. Whereas if you're just becoming a more expert knitter and you're making things for yourself or your friends, or maybe for one or two bespoke clients that are one of a kind, and you can't get that anywhere else. We have a different kind of art in the world. You have things that are inspirational. And it's just not a good enough reason to get into design because you feel like that's the next step, or because you want to make things for you.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think if you want to just make things for yourself, just make things for yourself. And it's real that one, like a lot of us, of course, do design things that we want to wear. Like I like my designs, I wear them. For the most part, there are designs that I've put out because I think they suit my customer, and they might not, like some of my designs I wear a lot more than others. However, all of them fall within the aesthetic of like my design.
Right.
And when I decided to start selling my patterns, it was after I started making garments for myself. And when I received like feedback from people that they wanted the pattern, then I was like, okay, well, I'll give this a try. But I was lucky because my background is in art. So I had a really clear understanding of what it's like to build a creative business. Before I did this, I had a jewelry brand for like 8 years or something like that, 8-9 years, which I started alongside teaching yoga. Teaching yoga by itself is not like crazy profitable, although, I've made my living that way, so I'm grateful. But I had a yoga jewelry line, which supplemented my income, and building that business, like starting from just selling to people I knew, and then eventually getting into wholesale and selling to like yoga studios across the country, but then also seeing that business die. Like I went through a whole life cycle of that business before I decided to close it. And so I learned a lot about like growth, about managing your own product-based business. So if you're a designer, you're selling a product, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So I knew what to expect. And what I wanted was just nice, slow growth to like build something that I'd be really proud of and make my mistakes kind of quietly at first.
Yeah. Well, plus there's an intimacy, I think, to creating things that are intended to delight a certain person and knowing who's in your audiences, right? Knowing who you're talking to, knowing who's in the room when you say something. And like you, like there have been times when I have felt like, okay, like maybe I'm putting on too many people at Instagram at once and that's uncomfortable. Like I don't want to lose track of who's here. I want to have a good sense of who's here. And I don't necessarily want to bring in a whole bunch of people that are not the person I'm reaching out to with my design work or my classes. And I will like do something deliberately to make Instagram stop. Like I will put out something I know that will make the algorithm like grumpy and they will stop serving my stuff to as many people. Like I have done that before because I agree with you. Going slow and steady is more sustainable in the long term. And I think it keeps us focused on who we're serving.
Yeah. Who are you designing for? And I like what you said, like it is very possible. So first of all, just as easy to make your living as a social media influencer as a knitwear designer, just so you know. So like if you want to design for yourself and make art and grow a following that loves what you're doing, you can do that without actually putting a pattern out in the world. And
it is probably 100% as lucrative. Yeah.
Right. Like I think they're likely neck and neck. And the amount of people actually succeeding in the spaces are probably pretty similar. So if your skill set is really strong in social media, I mean, yes, if you have a huge social media following because you have a strong skill set there, it is easier to sell a pattern or two patterns or whatever. But unless you really have built up the understanding and you have the information to like back up your designs, then you may or may not be successful long-term in pattern sales, even if you have a large following to start with. But if you know how to build a large following, then you can use that really for anything. Like you can receive money from yarn companies, et cetera, and receive just as much free yarn as other designers, just designing in that kind of creative space, which is really cool. Yep. If you are designing a pattern that is for someone else. So ultimately it's all about that someone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mentioned some mistakes. Let's talk about that a little bit. I think that's some of the juice that people are here for, right? Like Jen, what are some of the mistakes that you remember making that you look back on now and kind of cringe from your early days?
So that first pattern I did, where they were like, oh yes, we love this in kids, but we also want it in adults. Oh my God. I probably was just the most anxious wreck I've ever been for the 3 weeks that I was working on that pattern. I was intimidated at grading. So I was also taking a class on grading at the same time, which was super helpful. And I'm so glad I had the opportunity to do that. But I had carefully swatched. I was using the yarn they'd asked me to use, and I had swatched with it very carefully, and I graded it. And I knit this whole adult sweater, and I did have to rip back because I made so many mistakes. First of all, I was working with Malabrigo Rios, which is a kettle dyed yarn.
Yeah.
And I did not alternate skeins.
Oh, no.
I didn't even...
You do have to rip back.
Yeah, and I was knitting at night. Like I was working a full-time job somewhere else, so I was only working at night, and I had it hung up by my window, and I came out one morning and saw it hanging there in the morning light, and I was like, oh shit, I'm starting over.
Yeah.
I'm starting over. So that was the one. And then I blocked that bad boy, and it grew so much. It grew so much. I mean, it's superwash, and that is a particularly plump, slippery superwash.
Yeah.
You could have worn the arms of a scarf.
Plies, is it? Or is it plies?
It's very round. Yeah, it's very round and very slippery and very plump. It's a lovely yarn, but it will, when it's wet, behave very badly, and it behaved very badly. And
it's hard to predict like a yarn like that for a garment, because what your little swatch, even I know you don't make little swatches, but like a swatch is still relatively little because it's not a sweater. So, you know, what your little swatch does when you block it and test it out is just, it's not always the same as when you're working with, that's a fairly heavy yarn.
Yep.
Like, yeah. And just like floofy and slippery. So it's going to change so much when you take a whole garment and put it in the bath.
It probably took me 4 hours to pat that thing into submission. And like what we have learned, I think both of us, is that superwash, when it's wet, will behave differently from when it dries. And so, yes, you can pat it back into dimensions, allow it to dry, and it will do its thing.
It's amazing. It is amazing. But you have to, if you don't pat that baby back down, I bet.
It was just like that thing is never going to dry because I was just soaking it in salt water. I was just like losing my mind. And then the company that I was doing it for didn't send me instructions on how to ship it. And I was nervous about how to ship it. I didn't want it to get creased because I didn't want there to be any chance of them needing to reblock it.
Right.
Because I didn't want, like, I felt like I had done a flaw.
Right. You felt like you got away with something.
Yeah.
Don't get this wet. It will grow 10 times its size.
I feel like the shipping center, like, you know, there's a post office, but then you have like a shipping center where you get to know the people or whatever. I was like, I have no idea how to pack this. And they're like, well, how about a bag? And I was like, no, because then it's going to get like all wadded up in the bottom of the bag. And they're like, okay. I was like, listen, I'm going to pay you your fee to like pack things professionally, pack this professionally. I think it needs to be able to not get crumpled in a bag. I think it needs to go in a box. And so, yeah. So they packed it for me.
I would have rolled it. What did they do? Did they roll it?
It was folded in, it wasn't rolled, but it was folded into this box. So it didn't have a lot of, so it wasn't squished at all, but it also wasn't like able to move around. And so it was like air bubbles or something.
Yeah. I feel like I would have taken a big bubble wrap sheet and like laid the sweater on it and then rolled it in the bubble wrap the way you roll it in a towel, like to block. Yeah. Something like that. But I mean, look, sounds like whatever they did worked out fine.
No, it did not. It was
terrible. NVM. They should have asked Bess.
Well, and like the company I was working with, they're no longer around, but they were like, we welcome new designers, but like they were so mean. They were so mean to me so many times about stuff I didn't understand. And so it got there and they were like, we really wish you had done a better job packing this. Like it arrived here, the box got wet. It will definitely need to be reblocked. We're going to have to pay somebody to do that. And I was like, I will send you the receipt that shows that I had this professionally packed. And like, they ended up writing back and being like, you're right. If we really wanted you to do it a certain way, we should have told you.
Yeah.
But no, and then I was just like 3 weeks waiting to see if they were like, this is not to gauge, your thing doesn't match the schematic measurements. And
like, we hate you, Jen. You're fired from knitting. You're not even allowed to go to your local yarn store anymore.
Yeah, you're not even allowed to knit anymore. You're over, you're done. We're going to tell everyone how terrible you are. Of course, none of that actually happened, and it was all fine because
those aren't even mistakes, are they? It's just like it was their mistake to choose the yarn that might have been difficult for the project. I suppose you could have like weighted your swatch, but that is so imprecise that like I don't really do that.
I don't either. And also, I don't think I would, in retrospect, do something different other than choosing a yarn that behaves better when it's wet. Because what I know now is that that's just what Superwash does. And it does go back to the correct dimensions. And
you can't, but you have to beat it back. You have to pat it a lot. Like your life depends on it. You pat it back and then it will dry and it will be so nice. But if you let it stretch, it will be, like a sheer bed linen type.
Yeah, but I feel like then you've blocked it under tension, right? So when it dries, it's under tension in a way.
Yeah, it's just been pulled apart because of the weight of itself and like the way that Superwash behaves with water. Which does, yeah.
Okay, you tell me a pain story now. I want to hear you suffer.
I mean, I feel like I was just so embarrassing when I started designing because I knew nothing at all. And so I posted my first projects that I made myself, and they turned out great. So I was like, I got a new skill. I can do this. And then people were like, you should release these patterns. And I was like, okay. But I didn't know what that meant at all. So like I've shared that I was painfully unaware of like what the not correct, but like what a size inclusive range looks like. Because it was always my intention. I'm very like sensitive and I want to welcome everyone. And I'm always thinking like, I may have hurt this person's feeling, you know, I'm that person. My astrological sign is a Cancer. So I really wanted to like serve the greater community, but I didn't even know who that was. I felt like I should have done a lot more research before I put my first patterns out there. But to tell you the truth,
it wasn't out there then. It just wasn't out there the way it is now.
I mean, yeah, I did what I could in terms of being very broke at the time because my industry was shut down. And it never really came back, by the way. Yoga is not what it once was. And that's okay because I'm still fine. And I hope other people are too. But regardless, I couldn't just like pay thousands of dollars to do a course. And most courses were in the at least 1,000-ish range, right? Like most courses that I knew or could find, I couldn't afford. And also I was really under the wrong impression about like how long it should take. So I wish that I had the foresight to be like, I'm going to work on this first sweater for a year and then put it out, because I was trying to rush through. Like I knit my sample first before I did the math. I didn't know how to do the math. So I was ending up with like a 12-inch deep arm side for like a 54-inch full bust. And thankfully, by the time I really started releasing patterns, you had told me like, well, you can use a tech editor. I was like, a what? So like my first pattern that I put out in the world was test knit, but not tech edited. And then I went back and had it edited after the fact. And the gauge was listed totally wrong. So I don't know how it was test knit. Just everything. But it had never sold a copy because it was like, I had like 50 followers on Instagram or something. And I was just putting it out to put it out. Because
no harm, no foul then, at least, right?
Right. No one paid for it until it was fixed. And since then, those first few patterns that were not size inclusive are no longer available in my library anyway. But if I had decided to take more time, then I would have, I think, just maybe not had to take those patterns out of my library because it is expensive to redesign a pattern. And it takes a long time to put it through test again. It takes a long time to put it through tech again, and money. And, you know, I have no regrets. I learned the way I learned. I'm here today doing a better job. But if somebody would have told me like, expect it to take a year, then I think I would have felt a lot better. Cause that's what I give myself now. You know, I'm getting the yarn I got a yarn for fall 2023 in like August of 2022, you know? And then that's when I'm like winding up those first skeins and doing the first swatch and making sure that the plan I have is going to work out. I might not knit the thing for a couple of months, but I know to give myself like a huge buffer. And also because I hate running tests that don't feel long enough. And,
I feel like this is the hardest thing about our job is that you do the fun creative part, which is coming up with the idea, the swatch, you do all the design work, and then you park the bitch for a year. And then when you come back to it, the fun is over. Nothing's left but work.
I know. And you're just left with the insecurity of like, do people even want what I have? And
has passion moved on? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. When I was designing jewelry and putting it out there, it was such a faster turnaround that like I could get a new collection out in a couple of months, have like 12 to 20 new pieces to share with people. And so the feedback was faster, where I could also be like, no, not this. I'm going to move in a new direction. But when we're designing garments, and I think most of our inside info here is about garment design because that's what we primarily do. You're not going to get the feedback on whether or not your audience liked it until you've already designed like your next 3 or 4 or
Right.
whatever. They're already in test. So
they're committed. Yeah.
You know, like yeah, it's just, I think if you just expect and know upfront, give yourself like a year, then there will be a lot less stress along the way and you'll be able to correct like as you need to. And I do that now. If something's in test and my testers are struggling, sometimes I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to push this launch to a different time now because I've learned that sometimes it feels better to just hold off. Sometimes you cannot do that. As an indie designer, I'm lucky that I have space to do that sometimes, but everything has a cost. So
yeah, there's this
forward has a cost. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
There's a push-pull between like having the people that will help you with your launch and help you co-promote your design, have a timeline they can rely on and plan, right? Because, you know, some people have their social media or their email plans done out months in advance. So if you interrupt that, like you can be really letting somebody down and, you know, really harming their business. Or like testers might be really excited to share their thing. And then you're like, well, it's not going to be a year and that can lose some of the shine for them and you don't want to let them down. But I think, okay, so I want to back up if we can to tech editing because we got a lot of people who said that the thing that they wish they knew had something to do with tech editing. And so if you're a knitter and you're not in the loop on the process, a designer will come up with an idea. They will write a pattern, they will grade it, they will make the sample, and those things are often happening at once. And then they will send it to a tech editor. And a tech editor's job is to check it for accuracy, consistency, readability, and you know, just to make sure that the knitter is going to have a great experience with your pattern. It's not just checking the numbers. It's also making sure that the pattern, it's anything an editor would do if you had something edited.
Tech editors are like super editors because they're doing like the editing that like a writing editor does. And they're also doing like math proofing.
And spatial proofing, right? Like, is this, you know, like I like to think that a tech editor would have caught this error on the pattern I have and I wouldn't have sent it to test, but they might not have in their mind, is this stitch pattern going to do this thing on the back needles? If I couldn't conceptualize it ahead of time, could they? So it's a big thing we ask tech editors to do.
It's true. And finding a tech editor that you can rely on can be really difficult as well because you are asking, well, it helps to be super clear what you're asking, right? So like there are times that I ask my tech editor to help me grade something. Like sometimes I'm just so done that I'm like, could you just calculate the neck edging for me? Because I don't want to, you know?
Can you do yardage? Yeah. Can you put together?
Yeah, the yardage. Right. But if I just put a yardage and I say like, I don't specify that I want proofing, I mean, I would hope that a tech editor would find a large inconsistency, but if I just like made up numbers and put it there, then the tech editor doesn't know that I really need you to like really help with that. Yeah. You know, like that kind of thing. Does that feel like a good example? Maybe that wasn't.
Yeah, and I'm usually, I tell my tech editors what I'm soft on, like, hey, I kind of suck at these things, so pay extra attention because this is a place that I know I have a weak side.
Yeah. And when you say pay extra attention, you also are saying, and I'll pay you extra money for your time on that.
Yeah. If it seems weird, it's probably because it's weird and not because you need to run the numbers again. Yeah. Okay. But so you and I both did the tech editor search and hire process at the end of designing or grading. Yeah. And I think that for me, at least, it felt like I was turning in an assignment to somebody who was going to give me a grade and judge me.
Yes.
And now I know that, first of all, a tech editor would love to be involved earlier, right? And also that they care about the knitter's experience. They're not interested in judging you. They get into tech editing because they care about great patterns being on the market. They're not here to judge you. They're here to help you. Yeah.
And I think if you say you're a new designer, exactly. When you say you're a new designer, then your tech editor is going to, I would assume, like expect less of you and know that there may be places where you need help. So
Yeah.
They are a good tech editor is your partner. And if you're a baby designer, like you're working on your first pattern, you may wish to hire like 2 tech editors and have one in the beginning who helps you grade and calculate. Because when you don't know what you're looking for, it is hard. And you can either pay for that in your time, and it would take me like months to get through the grading and the calculating phase of new patterns when I was a new designer, because it was really not like, I've never been bad at math, but I also have not been like making a lot of calculations through my life as an artist and yoga teacher before this point. Yeah. So it wasn't like my strength. I learned how to use like Google Sheets in order to be able to make a pattern. So someone who would have had those strengths would have saved me months of time, and I could have paid them most likely a pretty reasonable price. I don't know if I still would have made that choice because like my budget wasn't there, but know that you have that choice. Yeah. If you make that choice though, you are adding cost, because you have to, if you pay someone to grade for you, then you have to pay someone else to edit that person's work, right? Because you can't, no one can
they'll
edit
build that into
themselves.
Their fee. Sometimes they build that into their fee.
Oh, of having someone else edit it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you would want to talk to them about it, but someone cannot grade and then edit their own work for you. So right. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, it's an investment of money that saves you time. Right. Mm-hmm. And I work with every professional is going to have different strengths too, just like we as designers do. Some I have found I like to work with a bunch of different editors because they all have different things that they see and notice. And so I will learn different things from working with different professionals in that way. So some are going to be stronger with style and helping you make sure that you're super consistent and that your writing is tight. Others are going to be quick at redoing the math and get it back to you quickly. They may be softer in some of those other areas. Other people are going to be really focused on layout, right? And how a knitter is going to experience working your pattern. And some of them are going to be really strong in fit and checking your grade. And so it can make sense to bring somebody on that is really into fit and really into grading early on to review your schematic. I know early on with Local Meadow, which was my first drop shoulder design, I worked probably 40 hours on that schematic to get it all balanced, and then sent it to my tech editor and was like, check my grade before I do any math. I don't want to spend 3 months throwing myself down the hole of grading this and then find out that it's not good, or that I want to change something.
Yeah. And getting help early on with stuff makes a huge difference. I often hire you, Jen, to go over my schematics with me now, before I cast on, because a lot of times you help me recognize problems that like I don't yet see that I would see when I finished the thing if I didn't ask for that help. And so I have found that it saves me a ton of time to like go over it with someone first. And you're stronger with grading than I am. Your background is with like tailoring and sewing. So I'm happy to have you there to support me with that. And, if I didn't know you, then I would likely be doing that with a tech editor, with another consultant. So there are TEs that do this. There are designers that do this. But, if you bring someone on early in the pattern, it's consulting at that point. But you can pay someone to do the whole thing if you just want to do the design part and you have a budget that allows you to do that. And
this is what most of my design clients do. So this is a thing that's done a lot, is some variation of, here's where I am. Does this seem reasonable? Are there red flags? Are there things that are going to be ungradable? Is this going to fit somebody weird? Do the methodologies I used make sense? Is this going to create a pattern that's in alignment with my values for serving my customer? Yeah. And this is kind of on the same note as what Celine said, right? So like I said, one of the things that I do differently now, when I started designing, I knit the thing for me first to make sure that I liked it.
then I would jump into figuring out the grade of like how it would lay out for everyone. I don't do that anymore because if you are only looking at one size and it's for one specific person, like we talked a lot about size charts and body charts in the size and shape episode. So if I'm looking at my unique body, which we also talked about in the ruffle episode, then I'm not going to necessarily end up with the average kind of for those sizes. So I might make a choice for my garment that's actually like a modification. And now I've written it into the pattern if it's like in the sample in a way. This is maybe not the most clear way. So what I'm saying is that now I start by doing all of the grading, which is what Celine is saying too. You have your measure points like shoulder width, neck depth, armpit width, bicep circumference, etc. You determine those things first. Yeah. Then you can see how the pattern lays out as a pattern for all of the sizes. Then you turn that into numbers. And if there is something that your specific body needs, just like a knitter would, it's okay to make a modification on your sample. Like I might shorten my sleeves, you might lengthen yours, or we won't, and my sleeves will look too long and yours will look bracelet length. But either way, right? Like
I feel like the very, very, very most frequent thing that we see from new designers that is a grading error has to do with this letting the shaping take the lead. So they will work from the bottom up or the top down. They will work and increase every other row in both the sleeve and the body until they have something that they like, and then they will finish it. And then they will be like, okay, so for each size, I'm going to increase every other row to get to the bust circumference. And that will tell me what my neckline is.
And that's what I did for my first raglan. And that's when my tech editor, Heather, was like, I think you meant to do this in a way that makes actual sense for a body. Because then you end up with like an armhole that is 16 inches or a neck depth of like 13 inches, which is like down here on a lot of people. And if you're not watching, I just pointed at like my navel, basically.
Yeah. And that's what, when I say choosing a methodology and making sure it makes sense, that's exactly what I mean. Like, one, your methodology can be duplicate the shaping. Two, your methodology could be pin that to your neck rise plus your underarm depth to arrive at a total yoke depth, right? So those are methodologies. And like recently I've been like making sure that I'm going to do a yoke sweater later this year. I've been making sure that I'm happy with the methodology I will use to grade that armhole depth to make sure that I'm grading it. And so we're always learning. And it really helps to have a great peer group, right? So that's...
Yeah, you're not doing this alone. That's a big thing to realize. Like, you cannot do it alone. You are in partnership, even if you don't realize it, you are in partnership with the yarn company that you're using, whether they have given you yarn support or not.
Whether they know it or not.
Whether they know that you're in a partnership with them. But also that means, like, if they have controversial values and you don't know about it, then now you appear to have controversial values also. Like, we know someone whose design reputation may have been damaged a little bit because they chose a certain yarn company that does not have a good reputation anymore, you know, and like they hadn't heard that. So you want to look into who you're putting out there. When I was a new designer, I don't think I did as much of that as I do now. I know I didn't. And you're also in partnership with anyone who makes the pattern. So very much with your test knitters, and also very much with knitters in the future. So like receive the feedback also. Receiving feedback is opening yourself up for a lot of opinions, and you have to remember that they're each an opinion. So they each get like an equal weight, right? And don't take it to heart if like one person really disagrees with you. But like as a yoga teacher, there are websites where people can review fitness instructors and yoga teachers, especially when I was teaching in New York City. It's very competitive there, and people use those review sites. So Some teachers do not read their reviews, and I chose to always read my reviews because I went to art school. I enjoy getting critique and feedback. And I would have a thick enough skin to know, like, if one person says, like, I hated this yoga class, then it is true for them and it's okay, right? Not everyone loves peaches, and I am a big juicy peach. And if like 10 people though say like, I didn't like this music, or she didn't touch enough, or whatever, then that's real feedback. That is real feedback that I could then use to make myself better and better at my work. So same thing in the world of social media or any other peer group that you find out there, you know, ask for feedback. If you're really trying to grow, you need to get feedback from someone, and like take it all in and let it weigh equally. And if you need to like take the hard edges off, I'm always just looking for the message in the middle.
Yeah. I think there's something really vulnerable and terrifying and unintuitive about the testing process from a designer's perspective, right? Because you're basically asking a bunch of strangers to criticize your work.
Yeah. And you
that
don't
can be
know.
awful.
And you don't know, like when you're starting off, you don't know your testers very well. I have some testers now, and I know you do also, that I feel like I do know them pretty well. But everyone is a stranger when you meet them. And when you first start test knitting, you're probably finding people on places like Yarn Pond is like a big test knitting website that a lot of new designers will use to meet test knitters. There also are like Facebook groups and Ravelry groups, and maybe on your own social media account or other social media accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Like you're meeting strangers and you're bringing them in, and some of those people are going to communicate in ways that are easier for you and make more sense to you. And some of them are going to like what you're doing more than others. I mean, everybody thinks they like what you're putting out if they signed on for your test, but when they get under the hood, it's can be sometimes jarring to realize like, oh, this person doesn't think anything like me, right? Or sometimes people just give you no feedback for quite a while, and you're like, okay, are you guys okay out there? Like there's so many, it's a bit of a wild card when you put together a group of strangers. Like, how is this going to go? It's like running your own reality TV show in a Slack channel.
It is. Okay, so we are getting close to the amount of time we have for today.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we could probably talk about testing for an hour by itself. So maybe we'll do that one day. Maybe parting things you would say to folks who are considering becoming a designer, or, you know, maybe they've just started. What would you tell them?
I mean, I tell the same thing to basically anyone I meet that is starting a creative business. And that is that it's really about persistence. If you continue, you will get there, whatever your goal is, right? Like the only way to fail is not to do the thing. So just keep doing the thing. And like expect everything to take a long time.
Yeah.
Everything. But if you're willing to put in the time, then like you'll get where you want to go. I'm so much more satisfied with the garments that I put out now than when I started. And I was happy with what I was making myself then, but like I'm happy with what I'm making for everyone now. Yeah. And I feel the strength to persist.
Yeah.
What would you say?
You know, there's so many things I could say, but I think the number one thing is make sure that you're coming at this as a business, not as, make sure it makes sense from a business perspective. Like, make sure you're okay doing bookkeeping. Make sure you're okay knowing that, like, at least 40% of your time is actually going to be marketing, and that you will probably not spend any more time knitting than you ever did before. and you might spend less time knitting than you used to.
Yeah.
That you're going to be dealing with contracts and customers and orders and banking and at the end of the day, within your first year or so, you don't need to be successful. You don't need to be financially solvent yet, but you need to have some idea of what a year's income and expenses would look like once you get there, so that you know what you're working towards. If you can't write out a way that this makes sense, then you're not going somewhere that makes sense, right? You're not, if you can't put it down in paper in a way that pencils out eventually, if you can't even imagine that from what you're doing, then you probably need to make some changes. And yeah.
And you might just want to be an advanced knitter that makes things for yourself and either modifies them or designs them from scratch. And you can do that. You can do that, like we said, just as successfully as you can design. So there, at the same time that things are limiting, that also means that there's more, like there is no one way to do this, one surefire path. So that means you have possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would add that most designers are not making their whole income on patterns.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know any
the same thing I tell new
Yeah.
yoga teachers, is that you have to realize that like you're not going to make all of your money in the one way that you think you will, like when you start off. So there are a lot of different ways that you can grow your work and your professional life as a designer that can look a lot of different ways. Jen does consulting. I do brand copywriting for people in the knitting world. So it allows me to feel fulfilled in the knitting space, and it is paying more of my bills than my pattern sales at the moment.
Yeah. And that's the reality of it. Yeah. I do grading and consulting. Other people might host events, or they might do more ghostwriting.
Yeah. Some people do a lot of submissions, although it's hard to make those profitable, but that's a different episode. And I mean,
so if you toss some patterns out there and you're not like, wow, I'm not financially successful, that's the norm. So don't think it's you.
That is the norm.
That's the industry. Yeah.
Although if your sales are like 0, 0, 0, 0, then you want to change something about what you're doing.
Some feedback. Yeah.
My business advice, if we're going there, well, I guess I already gave business advice, but more business advice is just look for growth. Don't look for a sudden skyrocket. Like no one can control whether or not they go viral. But if you see slow, steady growth, then you're going somewhere.
Yeah. Be in relationship with your people. Try and make them happy, make them things they'll love, listen to them, value them.
Yeah.
All that. Okay. Next week? Yeah, next week.
Well, 2 weeks. So
next episode, 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, we're moving into our official format, which is going to be every other week episodes for now. And so you'll get your next episode, February 22nd, I think, is 2 weeks from when this is going to be airing. But I just pulled that out of nowhere, so I might be wrong.
Third week of February for sure. Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about color, which is really exciting for us. We love color. I really love color and putting together palettes, using different yarns that may or may not just be like a straight up solid color. So that's exciting. We want to hear from you about what you think, your questions or comments. You can get us at hello@knitfixandchill.com, which is in our show notes, or you can find us on our social channels through show notes and submit feedback that way too. Jen, what else do we have going on?
Nothing.
Do you
That's
have
everything.
That's no. Everything. No, we are looking for you out there to come and be on our custom fitting series of episodes. So we released our first one in launch week with the ruffle addendum episode that we were talking about my particular knit. We'd love to have you on to talk about your particular fit issues or places that you could customize your garments for better fit, we can do that through the scope of something you've already made, or we can do that through the scope of something you would like to make, or even a non-handmade garment that you have that you'd like to wear, just so that we can say, like, you may wish to adjust your armhole depth or your waist measurement, whatever, so that we can help you customize your own garments so that you can get that perfect fit.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I have my show notes up like a good girl.
I was just looking at your face today.
I know. We're trying to figure out how to be our best podcasting selves, guys. So we're also always open to hear what you think about that. And
or if you want us to talk about something, let us know. If you want to hear our takes or have a conversation with us about something, let us know. We want to, again, make sure we're giving you what you want to hear.
Yeah, this podcast is for you as much as it's for us. Probably it's more for you. So if you have thoughts, we'll meet you there.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it. Check out the show notes if you want all the links and etc. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, everybody.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Happy knitting.